whole series now, before the series.
No pun intended.
Ring it. I sign. It's 2:00, and I call to order the meeting of the Code Enforcement Board for the City of Tarpon Springs this April 14th, 2016. Mr. Trask, would you lead us in an invocation, please?
Our Heavenly Father, we seek blessings on the tasks before us. Bless our efforts with clear insight, our deliberations with wisdom, our work with clarity and accuracy, and our decisions with impartiality. We pray that our work this afternoon will find favor in your sight. As we pray. Amen.
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 And a pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Vesey?
Here.
Mr. Sablaski?
Here.
Ms. V. Casey? Here. Mr. Kramer and Mrs. Archer is excused and absent from the meeting. Mr. DeMasis?
Here.
Mr. Charrier?
Here.
Mr. Bergman?
Here.
Mrs. Dabbs? Here. This completes your roll call.
Thank you. The Code Enforcement Board hearing procedure. It's the intention of this board to promote, protect, and improve the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Tarpon Springs by providing an equitable, effective, and inexpensive method of enforcing various codes within the city. Any aggrieved party may appeal a final administrative order of this board to the circuit court. Such appeal shall be filed within 30 days of the execution of the order to be appealed. Florida Statute 286.0105 requires any party appealing a decision of this board to have a record of the proceedings to support such an appeal. The procedure follows. With each case on its agenda is as follows. First, the city presents its witnesses and exhibits, after which the violator is able to ask the city's witnesses any specific questions regarding their testimony. Secondly, the violator is allowed to make any presentation and present any evidence or documents. Then the city can ask questions of the violator's witnesses. After both rounds of testimony, both on the part of the city and on the part of the violator, each party is asked to give a closing statement, first by the city, then by the violator. After those three steps are taken, this board then closes the public portion of the case to discuss it and to take appropriate action. Before we begin the public hearings, we'll have all potential witnesses to stand up and be sworn in by the secretary. So if you plan on chatting in front of us, please stand.
Do you swear your testimony about to give? I'm sorry. She also testify. I'm sorry. No,
We have someone who might be confused if they're going to testify or not.
I'm sorry.
Ma'am, are you going to testify?
Let's raise your hand anyway. We'll do that. All right. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, Receive.
Please turn off or silence all cell phones. First case of the day, case 16-8000029. Is anyone present for this case today? Hi. You'd be welcome to come in and sign in at the super, and then of course you'd be welcome to sit down and in front of the microphone. Would you please say your name and address into the microphone?
Sure. My name is Jennifer Pollen. I'm an attorney in Palm Harbor, Florida. I represent the mortgagee, Wells Fargo. The home is currently in a foreclosure posture. The foreclosure...
Hold on a second.
I'm sorry. I just want to make sure. I was looking, is this for 1122 Carlton Road?
Yes.
And so you're representing the Bradfords?
No, I represent the lender, the mortgagor. Or, I'm
Okay.
sorry, the mortgagee,
Okay.
Wells Fargo.
We're going to go ahead and let the city present its case.
Thank you. Officer Steve Gasson, City of Tarpon Springs Police Department Code Enforcement, reference case 16-800000029, reference the address of 1122 Carlton Road. February 2nd of this year, we received a complaint regarding trash and debris in front of the house and also tree branches low over the front sidewalk along the east side of the house. At that time, I conducted my inspection and I did find that the tree branches were less than 10 feet above the sidewalk. Also, there was trash, debris, and some other miscellaneous items kind of stored in the front porch area, up in the driveway in front of the garage. On February 16th of this year, we issued a notice of violation of the property. The initial time I left a door hanger, didn't get any response from the owners. And then on February 16th, we issued a notice of violation. Again, didn't receive any response from the owners of the property. On March 7th of this year, a notice of hearing was issued. We mailed it first class, both to the listed owner, Bradford Sullivan, his wife, Elizabeth Sullivan, and also Wells Fargo Bank was issued the same notice, so they were aware. They were sent via certified mail. We got unclaimed from the property owners, but we did get a return receipt from Wells Fargo acknowledging the violations. On April 2nd of this year, I posted the property regarding this hearing. And then on April 13th, I conducted a reinspection. It's still not in compliance. The owners, or somebody, had tried to trim some of the trees. They actually snapped off a couple of branches, but it's still less than 10 feet, about 8 feet. And then the trash and debris is still up on the front porch, and I have some photographs to show you that were taken on April 2nd, but it's still indicative of the way the property looked on the 13th of April when I conducted the final inspection.
So, she's not a party. You don't need to show her those.
Okay.
Okay.
And then, as I stated, there's still tree branches less than 10 feet above the sidewalk. There's still trash, debris, and some other miscellaneous items stored up at the front of the house, front porch area, and at the end of the driveway, close to the garage door. So I cited for City Ordinance 822, which is the accumulation of trash or debris on private property, and 852, which are nuisance prohibitions, which regarding the trees over the sidewalk.
Thank you. Ma'am, do you have any questions for?
Mr. Chairman, she's not a party to this lawsuit. She doesn't represent a client that's a party to, I mean, it's not a lawsuit, it's actually this case.
Okay.
So she's kind of like a bystander. So she doesn't have the opportunity to cross-examine. She doesn't have the opportunity to present evidence. If you want to listen to what she has to say, you can go ahead and do that. But she's not a party to this matter, and neither is her client. Her client has just been noticed of the hearing. It is a public hearing, so anybody can stand and watch the hearing go on, but you don't have to give her the same rights as you
Process,
would in a
right.
normal property owner being here.
And we're not disputing the violation. I just came to advise the board of the foreclosure action to let you know we have a judgment and the sale is set for May 11th. And that as soon as we secure title, we will of course clear up the property, but we don't have ownership until then.
When you get those photos, will you take those into evidence, please?
Yes, sir.
Does anyone have any questions of the city? Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I move based on the testimony, evidence, facts presented, and law that at the time of the alleged violations, sections 8-22 and 8-52 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Tarpon Springs were enforced. The respondent has until the 30th day of May to come into May 2016 to come into compliance with the code sections, or a fine of $50 per day shall be imposed for each day thereafter the respondent remains in violation of the code sections.
Second.
Any discussion?
Jennifer said that somebody, in May, May 11th, okay, so that should give them some, because I'm thinking, we won't see this case. Okay. No more discussion.
I have a question as to when do you think that, I know the bank owns the property, but what, at this point, how long, is that enough time? Because, you know,
If
we're
I
just
may
gonna go
have
around
some
and around.
input, the public auction on the foreclosure judgment is scheduled for May 11th. So this type of house, normally what happens is the bank would buy it back at auction. However, the certificate of title doesn't issue till 10 days after the sale, which gets you to May 21st. So the odds of getting in compliance by the 30th are pretty low, because the bank would then have to hire a maintenance company, get in there, and from what the pictures I saw before the hearing, that the violation is pretty extensive. So if we could have any longer than that, I'm sure, you know, Wells Fargo is aware of the issue and they want to get it cleaned up, and will do so as soon as they can.
Mr. Chairman, I'd be more than happy to amend my,
You know,
time.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna interrupt, and although we shouldn't have actually had her testifying on behalf after the motion was made, so I'm gonna just say, let's work with what we have, if I may be so bold. So, can we have a roll call, please, on the motion on the table?
Yes. Mrs. Dabbs?
No.
No. Mr. Bergman?
Yes.
Mr. Charest?
No.
Okay. Mr. DeMasis?
Yes.
Ms. Vaquesi?
Yes.
Mr. Sobleski?
Yes.
Mr. Vesey?
Yes,
Your motion carried.
thank you. Second item, new business, case number 16-800000037, 431 Grand Boulevard. Is anyone in the, yes, super. Please, if you would, once you get seated, if you haven't signed in, do so, and state your name and address into the microphone for
Sure,
us.
we both signed in. To my left is the property owner, Stavros Salikas. I'm attorney John Shahan, his attorney, and I've also signed in.
The city, please.
Reference case number 16-8000037, the address 431 Grand Boulevard. On or around February 15th of this year, we received a complaint into code enforcement regarding tree branches on the east side that are below the allowed clearance over the sidewalk. Also, a dead tree in the backyard that's intruding on a dilapidated shed, and the shed is in very poor condition and appears to be leaning, and in some regards seems to be held up by the vines that are growing all over the shed. I actually met with the property owner, Mr. Salikas, and walked around, talked about the violations in question and what needed to be done, and advised him he had to remove the shed, remove the dead tree and the vines that are just, the vines are causing strangulation of the other trees, and trim the trees out front. On February 23rd, a notice of violation was issued, and then on March 16th, a notice of hearing was issued. It was mailed first class to certified return receipt requested to the property owner based on the Pinellas County Property Appraiser's website and the tax collector. We did receive a return receipt from the property owner, and I did have, as I stated, the initial contact with Mr. Salikas. I didn't have any further contact with him since that point. I did conduct a reinspection, and the trees out front were taken care of, so that is not before us today as far as a violation goes. But the shed has not been removed at that time. We had a rather long conversation about the shed at the time. Basically said he was still using it. It turns out it probably hadn't been used in quite a while. You can tell by the shape that it's in, and it's in pretty poor condition. And I do have photographs that we'll present to the board. And the tree, as of April 13th, had still not been removed. So as of April 13th, shed was still there, tree's still there. When I present the pictures to the board, there's one of the pictures has a car under a cover. That has nothing to do with anything, so just try to look past the car. So he was cited for 8-40, duty of maintenance of private property, And then City Ordinance 13302, which is the applicability and maintenance of trees for all properties within the city. And apparently, spoke to Greg Dobbins. It's a citrus tree. There's no permit
I'm gonna
required.
object to his giving the hearsay testimony of somebody that's not here. Mr. Dobbins is the one that should be here testifying because it's an arborist issue, but he should not be allowed to tell us hearsay of what Dobbins said. I'm not able to cross-examine Mr. Dobbins today because he did not appear.
Mr. Chairman, let me just go ahead and address that. The formal rules of evidence don't apply in code enforcement proceedings. You can receive hearsay evidence, but since a motion has been made to, or objection has been made, you need to rule on it whether or not that you're gonna sustain his objection and not allow the officer to testify as to what the arborist said, or you're gonna have to, overrule his objection to the testimony coming in. So that's your decision, it's not a board decision.
With all due respect, I'm gonna overrule, and we'll be happy to hear what Mr. Dobbins had to say.
I just want to make a record. That's fine. That's what you've done, but
Understood.
I keep a clean record throughout the proceeding that the arborist is
John.
the only person qualified to testify as to dead tree or not dead.
Okay. We do have some photos we'd like to show you to have approved, please.
Thank you.
Anything else from the city?
Not at this point.
I didn't think so. And so, do you have any questions of the city, sir?
Oh, yes, I sure do. Officer Gaston, you went there without a administrative warrant or without the consent of my client, correct?
That's false.
Okay, how did my client give you consent?
I asked him if we could walk in his backyard, and he said yes. And we walked in the backyard. I knocked on his front door, made contact with him, asked if we could talk about some items on the property. He said yes. We walked back there, and we talked about the items on the property. For what it's
Is that
worth,
true?
sir,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
they're also all in plain view. So, no, I didn't use search warrant because they were in plain view, and I did have consent from the owner to enter his property.
Okay. And he started to explain to you all the issues, the shed, the dead tree alleged that's not dead, and the vines, correct?
He started to, or I did?
No. You asked him questions, and then he responded and tried to give you an answer as to these items, correct?
I believe so, yes. And
And at that point in time, you told him that he better be quiet, or you're gonna have him Baker acted, correct?
no, I did not.
Okay. Okay. Okay, sir, you have described the shed as dilapidated, and you've testified that although my client said it was still in use, that you didn't believe it was. Did you go, in fact, inside this shed?
No, I did not.
Okay. Did you take any pictures of the inside of the shed? You've shown us the outside shed picture.
No, I did not.
And isn't it true that my client told you that he uses the shed for his lawnmower and other tools?
No, he said he used it for laundry, and then he changed his story after I pointed out that there were things inside of it that he couldn't have even gotten to the laundry, and he stated he lied to me about it. And we
So-
had a long conversation about him lying to me about the structure, the tree, numerous other items, up until the point where he started to get slightly hostile, and that's when we discontinued our conversation and I left.
So since you just testified that you didn't go inside the shed, you can't with any credibility tell us what's going on inside the shed, whether he could do this or that or anything, because you weren't even in the shed.
Well, these are his statements, unless you consider that hearsay. But that's him telling me he hadn't been in the shed for years.
And-
Again, and I also spoke to some other people that said, pretty much that shed's been there for
Objection to
over
what
40
the other people said is hearsay.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, you need to either sustain that or overrule that. The objection
I'll
was,
sustain that, objection. Any other questions, sir?
I certainly do have other questions. In terms of this tree, did you note that there are 3 different recent grapefruit that have appeared on this tree that you describe as dead in your allegation?
Am I aware now that there's 3 grapefruit on it?
Did you see that when you were in plain view of the tree?
I saw a grapefruit on it, but I couldn't tell if it's live or not.
Well, it was hanging from the tree, correct?
Yes, sir?
And are you telling us that you only saw one live grapefruit?
Sir, I don't recall.
And in
I know
fact-
that your client made a point to point out the one fruit on the tree, on a tree above his shed. And the tree I'm looking at, as you can see in the
object to move
pictures,
to strike.
is all appearances
He's
appears to be
going
dead.
beyond the question. He's adding things that he thinks are helpful to him that are beyond my question.
For that.
My question is what he saw, not what my client said.
I'm gonna overrule this one. I think he's just trying to answer your question, sir. Next question?
And are you aware of any types of chemicals and other relief for trees that have citrus greening?
Am I aware of chemicals that have to do with what? I'm sorry?
Keeping trees alive that have citrus greening?
No, I'm not an arborist.
Okay. And of course, I objected to the arborist testimony, but it was allowed in over my objection. So isn't it true that Mr. Dobbins told you this tree has citrus greening?
No,
What did he tell you it has?
he said it was a citrus tree, and he didn't need a permit to cut it down.
What did he describe as the disease that allegedly killed this tree that you describe as dead in your allegation?
He never spoke to me about that. I asked if it was a citrus tree and if it needed a permit. He said yes and no. That was the extent of the conversation.
You asked him if it needed a permit for what?
To cut it down.
Okay. So you didn't really ask him how you decided to put in this allegation that it was a dead tree?
I used simple observation, sir.
Okay, so your observation had nothing to do with Mr. Dobbins. You looked at the tree and you decided it was dead.
Yeah, in my 48 years of life, I've seen a few trees and it appeared to be dead to me, and that's why I presented it to the board for them to determine as well based on the photographs I presented.
In these life experiences, have you seen dead trees that have a bunch of leaves on them?
I've seen dying trees that have leaves on them, yes.
But how about totally dead trees?
I don't know, sir. Again, I'm not an arborist.
Because you described in your allegation this case as a dead tree. You didn't say it was a dying tree, correct?
Okay,
Right here on the
semantics.
notice.
If you'd like, I can amend that to dying or dead tree.
I might interrupt. I failed to understand this line of questioning. Could we just cut to the chase, please? If you have any direct questions of the officer's testimony.
I've just had direct questions. The obvious
They
thing
seem
we're
to be
trying to
me-
show
they-
it's not a dead tree.
They seem to be meandering a bit to me in regards to the citrus greening. And I think that we
I
can
think
decide
you're showing some bias with your
With-
suggestion that we're meandering. Maybe you should remove yourself from the case there.
with due respect, we have photographs that we can decide from the photos.
Now, are you saying that the third allegation in your opening statement, you've withdrawn the thing about the vines growing onto the trees?
No, I did not. I said the
What
tree.
was the allegation you withdrew? You withdrew one of your allegations in your opening statement.
The trees overgrowing the sidewalk in front of that.
Okay, well, I'm looking at your notice of hearing, and it doesn't even talk about trees overgrowing the sidewalk. It says
That's because I
vines-
withdrew it.
It says vines growing onto the trees. It doesn't say anything about sidewalk.
Correct, because it was withdrawn. It was part of the initial complaint, and I was informing the board that when they look at the paperwork, that that's not part of the complaint now, that what we're dealing with is the dead or dying tree, the vines that are strangulating the rest of the tree, and the dilapidated shed.
Okay.
And I made it a point to say that the overhanging branches over the front sidewalk is no longer an issue. So that's why it's not in the notice of hearing.
And what vines are growing onto the tree? Describe them.
Probably the ones he was out yesterday cutting down around the south side of his house. might want to ask him that.
So-
They're the ones that look like vines that are wrapping around trees, causing them to get strangulated. But I saw the defendant out in his yard yesterday, cutting down numerous foliage. Well, I saw a male out there as well on the.
Hold on a second, ma'am. You can't testify from back there.
So I saw a person out on the south side of the house cutting down what appears to be vines and some of the foliage that was. There's a massive amount on the south side of the house.
Okay,
That's what
so
the
you
contention
cannot
was.
describe whether the vines were philodendria, grape ivy, or what they were, correct?
I'm not an arborist. They are vines. Matter of fact, it looks like you might have some vine-looking plants right there on the table in front of you.
So you don't deny that you said you're gonna Baker Act my client, but it was after he got hostile, correct?
I don't recall the conversation, and there was a lot of conversation for about a period of 30 to 45 minutes, and I don't recall all of it. But if at some point in time he made some statement about he wanted to either die, kill himself, or do something like that, I told him one of those options is to be Baker Acted. If that got brought up in the conversation, yes. In the context that you presented it, no. I didn't say that to him. I said it was a possibility that it could occur if certain circumstances or statements are made. And that's true as of right now. If he makes those statements to me right now, I do have the legal right and the very real possibility of Baker Acting him.
I have no further questions of this witness.
Thank you. You can now present.
Mr. Chairman, I would just ask that since we have Mr. Gasson up here, that if there's any board members that had questions of Mr. Gasson before he's done, before we go into presentation by Mr. Salikas.
Does anyone have any questions, Officer Gasson?
I do. The shed,
Yes, ma'am.
will that need a permit to be taken down?
I do not believe so. I'd check with the building department. For the most part, though, erecting them is permittable.
Okay.
Taking them
Because it
down isn't.
It looked
Correct.
kind of big, and I thought, maybe.
It's
that-
probably, just guessing, 12 foot by maybe 8 foot, and then you could see, you got a pretty good picture of the back side of it, so,
Okay.
and you can see what kind of shape it was in.
Is the shed behind a fence?
No, sir, it is not. It's actually, to give you an idea where this property is, if you know where St. Michael Shrine is, it's the house directly. If you're looking at St. Michael Shrine, it's the house directly to the left, right on the corner of Grand and Hope. So you can see the shed. The one picture that I presented to you that had the car in it, to the right is the shed covered with all the branches, and I took that from the sidewalk. All those pictures were actually taken from the right-of-way.
Did someone file a complaint about the dead tree or the vines?
Yeah, it was an anonymous complaint.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Is it Mr. Salikas? Good afternoon.
Yeah.
You're welcome to make your presentation now. Thank you.
Right, he's gonna do that through my questioning him, yes. Please state your full name for the record.
My given name is Stavros Demetrius Salikas. I was born in Purple. I'm
Yeah.
a native.
Okay.
I'm a native. I'm a veteran. I'm an elderly person. I'm 79 years old. And I don't do drugs. I don't do anything bad. I've never had a bad experience with any police officer in my entire life until this gentleman more or less accosted me in my front door.
Okay, sir, we need to stick to the issues in the case, okay?
John, can you bring that microphone closer to both of you so that it
Sure.
makes it a little bit clearer?
That'd be good.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Sir, what was your line of work, before you retired?
I was a pharmaceutical salesman, detail man, so to speak, and I also was in real estate.
Okay, now, in terms of the trees on your property, the one that the officer described as dead, is it in fact dead or alive?
It is alive and thriving. It's suffering from citrus greening, if anybody knows what that is. Do y'all know what citrus greening is, please?
They don't answer questions,
I'm
you
sorry.
answer questions.
Well,
Just hang
citrus-
in there, we'll save that for the closing. Okay, so what are you doing about the citrus greening on this tree?
I'm providing it with botanical penicillin. It's my concoction. I've lost 2 orange trees because I didn't treat them with the material that I'm treating now. And that tree that you're talking about destroying is worth $1 million. Because if I can show, because I've got one citrus tree, an orange tree, that I've been able to keep growing with this treatment. Botanical penicillin, I call it.
Okay, now this tree that you kept growing, It's another tree on the property,
There's
correct?
another tree on the property.
And what kind of tree is it?
It's an orange tree.
Okay, now, they're talking about these vines that are growing that the officer describes as hindering the tree. Are you on Social Security?
I'm strictly on Social Security.
You have limited funds as it relates to air conditioning.
Absolutely. I can't afford to turn on my air conditioner.
Now, these vines, are some of them philodendron?
Yes, philodendron.
And what do you use the philodendron vines for?
Oxygenation of my property because I'm on the corner lot and it's like a raceway in the morning between 6 and 8 o'clock. I can't afford to run my air conditioner. I need to have my windows open. I keep them open on my tree side, on the inside lot.
And does the philodendron then come through the window? The smells and whatever?
Well, it just oxygenates the air. It keeps it fresh and it cuts the fumes down.
Okay,
CO2.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
CO2 is absorbed by plants, as you know,
Okay,
and
now,
allows us to breathe. You know, try holding your breath for more than 2 minutes.
okay, now, you have other vines known as grape ivy.
Yeah, I have grape ivy too.
And did you bring each
Yes,
one of
this
those
is a
with you?
philodendron. This is the grape ivy, and this is jasmine. This is a third vine, supposed vine. This is jasmine, and you guys can see the flowers.
Okay,
And I love to have flowers, okay?
okay, now the grape ivy, what do you use that for?
Same thing. Grape ivy, all these plants are, you might say, air conditioning. They provide oxygen and health. And like I say, I don't take any pharmaceuticals, nor do I take any drugs. I don't take any drugs, not at all.
Okay. Now, in terms of this shed, this shed is used for what? Tools and what else?
Tools and my lawnmower.
Okay. And no one's living in that shed, are they?
Nobody's living in the shed. Nobody's living in the shed.
Now, in terms of the, have you also looked at some articles about citrus greening that you're studying to maintain this tree alive?
Oh, I've done some research on it, but unfortunately, the University of Florida hasn't come up with a solution at this present time.
Okay. So the best solution you found is this,
My botanical penicillin. I won't disclose it at this time, but I call it my $1 million tree. If I'm forced to cut that baby down, the citrus industry is down 20 to 30% in volume these last few years.
now, in terms of the fact that this tree has grapefruit still growing on it, you got pictures from today that we can show the board and also for Mr. Gaston, correct?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
And on these pictures, have you got flags that would show where the grapefruit is?
Yes.
Okay. So that's for Mr. Gaston, and these are the ones we'd like to put into evidence, duplicate, basically.
So are we gonna put all those photos into evidence?
We would like to put them in evidence because they show 3 different places where there are grapefruit growing on that tree that's
Super.
allegedly dead.
So you're not gonna get those back?
That's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, well, that's fine.
I have three pictures, and I guess you wanted to present 2 to the board?
Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry. Here's the third. Okay. I got 3 for you and 3 for them. I just, didn't notice where it was.
What exactly, I don't, can I ask about the photos?
Yes, it's called a voir dire. He can ask questions about that of the witness about the photos before he lets us know whether he's objecting to it or not. So
Okay, so we haven't approved the photos yet. You've got a question. It's,
Yeah,
voir dire.
I just don't, Mr. Salikas, what exactly are you trying to show in these pictures? Because I don't see anything, and I definitely can't. Granted, I'm not an arborist, I don't study fruit. I have a general idea what a grapefruit, an orange, a lemon, and a lime look like. And just before I can agree to these photos, they're not very, there's a round object in 2 of the pictures, and I can't tell what it is. So exactly where were these taken? I can't tell if they were taken in that yard, if they were taken down the street. So I would object to the photos based on, there's no way to determine where they were taken.
Why don't you let him answer the questions? Mr. Salikas?
Yes, it was taken today in my yard, yes. Absolutely.
Is that the tree at issue?
Yes, it's a tree of issue, yes.
You have any other questions?
Thank you.
I know, I have no further questions.
Okay, so Mr. Chairman, you need to decide whether or not you're going to receive these into evidence based upon what you've heard.
Absolutely.
I'll agree that it's difficult to determine exactly what that is a photo of and where it was taken, but we're certainly going to take Mr. Salikas at his word that they're of the tree taken this morning. So we'll accept those into evidence. Thank you.
Now,
I believe that you were given, go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you. Did you also, take a picture of the, vegetation in your property?
Yes, I have. This is a picture that I took.
Could I ask if you have more photos or a group of photos, could we just do all the photos at once if you're going to present those into evidence?
This is probably the last photo right here.
Thank you.
And unfortunately, I think we've lost the other one, so we can show it to Mr. Gaston, and he can decide if he's objecting, and then we want to put that in.
I have no objection. It appears to be the north side, which primarily is not the area of the house that's in contention. The contention is more along where the tree is along the west side of the house, between the house and the shed. Should be the west side. This is the south side of the house in this picture, which, okay, I don't argue it's his yard. Again,
Okay.
I can't tell when it was taken, but I don't argue that that's the north side of his house.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and take that in, now that we know that.
So, you believe that it would be harmful to you if you were ordered to take these vines down, the philodendria, the grape ivy, and the other oxygenator, the jasmine?
I definitely do, because I depend on my windows to be open. I can't afford to run my air conditioner. It costs me $90 a month. And I'm on strictly Social Security.
And they've also alleged in this, document that, this tree is a nuisance. This tree is totally on your property, correct?
Tree is totally on my property. It's not obstructing anyone, anywhere, anyhow.
And it's not over a sidewalk.
It's
correct?
not over a sidewalk.
And it's not on, the property of Goldie Parr, P-A-R-R.
Definitely not.
And do you believe that Goldie Parr is the anonymous person that put in the complaint?
She's admitted to it, several people, including myself. She offered to buy my house several years ago. I refused, and the code enforcement proceedings have been going on right after she began to, she also badgered me. She said I didn't have a pot to pee in, et cetera, and so forth.
So she offered to buy your house and give you a life estate, and then she was going to tear it down and put a parking lot for her.
Yes,
shrine,
she is the custodian of the shrine. Her mother and her father built the shrine through donations years ago. And when her mother passed away in 1994, she moved into the property and she tore down her mother's old house and had her boys, the Tagarelli construction boys, Danny and Michael, build her this new house. And unfortunately, all she has to do is look out the window and look at my neighbor's house and my house and complain as frivolously
Now,
and without.
has she also said that your tree is an obstruction to her view? The tree at issue.
Yeah, the tree at issue is always, all my trees and my plants are how did you phrase that? Obstruction to her view. Yeah, she doesn't like trees. She even removed two trees that her people that put their landscaping in, two beautiful crepe myrtle trees that were growing in front of her window. She had them removed because she didn't want her view obstructed.
Are you asking the board to determine that your tree is not dead and not a nuisance?
Absolutely, the tree is not dead. I'm treating it, like I said, with botanical, I call it botanical penicillin. And there are botanicals that are antiviral, antibacterial. And I am privy and I know about that. I'm living proof. I'm 79 years old. I don't take any pharmaceutical, guys. believe me.
Okay, and would you like to keep your shed so you can still use?
I would,
Time out till the question is over, please. Would you like to have your shed maintained so that you can still put your lawnmower and your garden tools in there?
yes, I would like that.
I have no further questions.
Thank you. Officer, do you have any comments or questions?
I have some questions.
Please.
Mr. Salikas, how long have you been retired?
I'm 79 years old. I retired at 62.
Okay, when was the last time you practiced as a pharmacist?
How is that significant to our conversation here?
Because you advised you issued or gave drugs to
Are
a
you the
tree.
one that told me you were going to Baker Act me? And yes, you did.
Sir.
Without any provocation, my man. And within 2 minutes of coming out of my house, in front of my house, on the sidewalk, and you were complaining about everything, the first thing that you said as I walked out.
I'm sorry, if I may interrupt. He's asking questions and you're supposed to answer the questions. Please.
So in 1962 was the last time you practiced, correct?
What is he talking?
I think
You
he's
last
saying-
practiced as a pharmacist in 1962, is
I
that
am not a
correct?
pharmacist.
Okay. You described yourself as pharmaceutical what?
I was a pharmaceutical representative,
Okay.
also known as detail man. who
So you
talked-
did not have a license to practice pharmacology or be a pharmacist in the state of Florida, correct?
I moved to strike the question because he never testified to that. And then
But he
the
advised,
question
well,
was
it goes
argumentative.
to my line of questioning, sir, as to how he managed to obtain penicillin, which normally I believe is a controlled substance in the state of Florida, and you need a prescription for it, to then make a concoction to give to a tree, and his own testimony is obviously diseased and potentially dying because you don't treat living things with a medication to prevent them from living some more. So,
Just the question is
my
irrelevant.
question would be, does he have a license to practice pharmacology? How did he obtain the
Hold on
drugs?
a second, let him answer
Okay,
one
I'm
question
sorry.
at a time.
Does he have a license to practice pharmacology?
That's a yes or a no, sir.
No.
sir.
Okay. How did you obtain the drugs that you provided to this tree to apparently save?
Who said I obtained drugs? You're putting words into your own mouth, man.
Sir, your attorney
I'm using
testified.
botanicals, which are not drugs.
Well, you said penicillin.
I said as a term of antibiotics. You know what antibiotics are? There's a whole range of penicillins.
Okay.
It was a general term. I'm not using penicillin per se.
Are you an
I'm
arborist?
using botanicals.
Okay. Are you an arborist?
Are you an arborist?
I've already testified I'm not, sir. Are you an arborist, sir?
Just yes or no, please.
This is absurd. No.
Okay. Are you aware how much oxygen is in the air at sea level?
Want me to bring my Linus Pauling chemistry book here?
It's a
I
question,
study
sir.
and I read a lot, my man.
Are you aware what the percentage of oxygen is in the air at sea level?
It's approximately.
Yes or no question, sir.
He's trying to finish it.
It's a yes or no
Direct the
question, Mr.
chairman to
Shahan.
Let him finish his answer before you interrupt him again.
Agreed, that maybe a little patience, and a yes or no is okay.
What was the question again?
Are you aware what the percentage of oxygen in ambient air is at sea level?
The percentage of oxygen is not constant, and it would be frivolous of me to say so.
Okay. And what method did you use to determine how much additional oxygen your trees provided to the air?
I'm an older person, and breathing becomes more difficult as one ages.
Did you advise me at any point that you were treating this tree when we stood out in the yard and talked about it?
I don't recall any of that conversation because we didn't have a conversation as you depicted. Within 3 to 2 minutes after knocking on my door, you described yourself as a code enforcement officer, and I saw that you were wearing a uniform and a gun. And you were very intimidating. You're the first police officer I've ever had any problems with. I've never in my entire life had any, and I've always had respect for police officers until now. And now, whenever I see a police car, I'm thinking about you, and I'm thinking, are you coming after me?
I'm going to interrupt. I'm sorry. I understand.
Well,
We're
okay,
listening.
let me get to
Please.
the big.
No. Actually, he's asking you questions. He answered your questions politely. Every question that your attorney asked, he answered, no matter how far from the topic it was. And now we're going to give him the same respect. Please. He hasn't asked you a question.
May I ask you a question?
No. Actually, you cannot. Go ahead.
All right.
Officer
I'm
Case.
almost done. Do diseased trees die?
They may die.
Okay.
Anything that is diseased may die, although they also may live if they're treated properly.
Okay. So there's a potential that that tree could die. Is that correct?
Possibly, but at this time, it looks like it's beginning to take on a new life.
Okay.
Okay, there's no
Let me
reason
ask you one other question.
Yell.
How close to the tree, how close to the shed is that tree that's in question?
Very close.
So if it dies and falls down, where would it fall? Is it not leaning over, oh, sorry.
The action calls for speculation.
Well, is it, okay, I'll rephrase the question. Is it above your shed and leaning over your shed? Is the top of the tree above your shed?
The tree is all, it provides a lot of shade for me and my car and my shed.
Okay, so it's above your
It
shed.
provides shade for me, myself, and my shed.
Okay. So is it possible that if it fell down, it would fall onto that shed?
It is not going to fall down.
Okay. I have no further questions. I just have a closing statement when the opportunity presents itself.
This is your opportunity. Thank
Hold
you.
on, one more thing, I'm sorry.
Yes, okay.
Since we got a lawyer involved. Mr. Shahan, do you have any redirect of your client?
No.
Okay. So now would be time for summaries then, Mr. Chairman. Okay, sorry.
Go ahead.
Basically, even as the Mr. Salikas has testified, the tree's diseased. My contention is it's either dead or dying. The pictures show something round in a gaggle of branches, which nobody's testified to what type of tree it is. He's testified it's diseased. Nobody's arguing the fact that this tree's diseased. Nobody's arguing that the shed's dilapidated, otherwise he wouldn't have the opportunity to try to repair it. Our concern, obviously, from the city's standpoint, the tree's diseased, which potentially could disease other trees because nobody's established what kind of disease it is. He's decided to self-medicate the tree by whatever means we're nobody's sure of. So for that reason, I would still contend that this tree's a nuisance under the city ordinance and should be removed before it either causes disease to other trees around or potentially falls down. It is next to the shrine, which, as we all know, has a number of people roaming around it. And as we all know, people don't necessarily care where they walk. Part of the reason why that shed's an issue is, as you can see in the pictures, it looks like if those vines are cut away from it, it's just simply going to implode. Whether or not it'll do that, that's the appearance that it has. And based on city's concerns for both the property, the tree, and the shed, he was found in violation, and that's why we're before the board now. And I will still stick to that contention that that tree is dead or dying, and that shed is dilapidated, probably beyond repair. No further.
In closing, I have to say that there's no.
John, bring the microphone in front of you so we can all hear you.
I'm sorry,
Thank you.
I kind of moved it after my client was a little loud. Okay, can you hear me now?
You might turn it down just a little bit, so it's nice, because you're kind of soft-spoken anyways.
The microphone, turn the microphone down.
Grab the head and turn it,
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I don't believe the evidence has shown that this shed is dilapidated. There's been no construction person that says that what it needs to get the shed in a better condition. And it's alleged the shed is a nuisance, but when you look at the nuisance standard itself in the ordinance under 8-41, it has to be something that is impairing the free use, privacy, and comfortable enjoyment of the other properties. And there's been no testimony that any other property owner has their property encroached on by this shed or has any concern because of this shed. Also a nuisance can be loud, raucous, and unnecessary noise or odors and whatever, and that hasn't been any proof of that. In terms of the tree, we've shown in pictures that there's still leaves on the tree. My client has testified that he's using botanicals, and it was successful on a different tree in his place, and that's what he's using on this tree. We brought in the vines as a demonstrative exhibit as to why he has those vines and why they're useful to him. I just don't believe that the city has proven any reason to either have the shed removed, to have the tree removed at this time, or the vines removed. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to close the public portion of the hearing and discuss it amongst ourselves. I was hoping that all the questions had been asked, but if there are questions of board members of either person, can we ask more questions?
Shouldn't at this point, not after they've closed.
Okay, so we're gonna stay closed. I would need a motion before we can continue any internal discussion. So, would someone be willing to make a motion, please?
I move based on the testimony, evidence, facts presented, and law, that at the time of the alleged violations 8-40, sections 8-40 and 133.02 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Tarpon Springs were enforced. The respondent has until the eighth day of June 2016 to come into compliance with the code sections, or a fine of $50 per day shall be imposed for each day thereafter the respondent witnesses the violation of said section.
I'll second.
Discussion.
This is just between us. I'm a little bit on the fringe here. Granted, I feel the vines need to be tore down, and if the shed is not tore down, I feel the shed needs a lot of maintenance work. But the tree is, I mean, I'm not saying everything needs to come down. Cut the tree down, demolish the shed, and cut the vines. If we could start working toward fortifying or rebuilding whatever the shed and cutting vines down, and then possibly give the gentleman 6 months grace period or something to see if his, and I don't want to use the word penicillin, but use the concoction that you have come up with for the other tree that you say is responding. Give him a time to see if that is, and then we can readdress this at a later time. But just to come in and say, cut the tree down, demolish the shed, and cut the vines, I'm not really on board with that.
I can definitely appreciate the predicament you're in, and whether or not this is a health issue that will help you or not, it can be debated all day long. But you think it is, and I think that's important for the board to understand. My main concern is the possible liabilities that there could be because of the situation where the tree is and the shed itself. To me, when I look at the picture of that shed, it looks dilapidated. It looks like it could fall down any minute. And I'm scared that if anybody gets around that shed or near the tree, people could get hurt. To me, that is my main concern.
I'm gonna take a second look at those photos. Would that be okay? Super.
I agree that that building is an eyesore. It doesn't even look like it could be repaired. I would think if the thing to do, if you wanted to argue tearing it down, is to get somebody in construction to sign off and say that they believe that building is structurally sound, because it doesn't look like it to me. It's an eyesore. I wouldn't want to live next door to it. And I do take issue with some of the vines. I have philodendrons all over my yard, and I'm seeing a vine there that it may be some form of philodendron, but that's the one that I have to go in and tear out of one of my little bushes because it's strangled.
I would chime in that I struggle myself with trees that aren't healthy and dying. I've lost some very personal and valuable palms, but the reality is sometimes when things go, they go. In addition, as part of our HOA, we had some large pines that I would have sworn were healthy, and someone said they weren't, and sure enough, that pine fell down, and thank God it didn't kill anybody. So that is hard, and my point is sometimes it's very difficult to tell the health of a tree. Counselor, is there a middle path that we might introduce the discussion seemed to center around professional opinion that no one could really provide in regards to that tree? Or is that not an option at this moment?
The city has presented its case. Mr. Salik has presented its case. You should be making your determination based solely upon the written the written testimony and evidence that you've received. And it's not really, you know, you're the judge and the jury. To have a judge or the jury say, let's stop what we're doing and let's go out there and provide us with additional information or additional evidence for us to make our decision. So I would tend to say that you shouldn't be telling either party, you know, to go out and find more evidence that would help you make your job a little bit easier. They presented their case, and you should be making your decision based solely upon what you're hearing and seeing today. What I would like to do, though, because it seems to be some confusion as to really what the code sections are, and it's really not about tearing down a shed, and it's really not about cutting down a tree. Your decision is to determine whether or not there's a violation of these two code sections, and I just want to read you the code sections. So the first code section is 8-40. It's one sentence long. No person owning, leasing, or operating, occupying, or having control of any premises within the city shall maintain, keep, or permit any nuisance as defined in section 8-38 and as further defined in 8-41 affecting the citizens of the city. The other code section that was cited was 133.02. It's titled Applicability and Maintenance of Trees for All Properties Within the City. And then it has, looks like 7 subparagraphs. First one is, the terms and provisions of this section shall apply to real property within the limits of the city. Next paragraph is owners of private property responsible for the maintenance of trees and private property and in abutting rights of way. That's the key here of what you're hearing. Trees shall be maintained by the owner, tenant, or their agent in good condition so as to present a healthy, neat, and orderly appearance. All plant materials shall be maintained free from physical damage or injury arising from lack of water, chemical exposure, insects, disease, blight, or other cause. Exceptions regarding damage due to the lack of water shall be made when the water consumption is limited by emergency orders or declarations by state or local agencies. And then there's another paragraph that talks about declared states of emergencies. Another one about mangroves. Those don't apply. Paragraph F, second to the last paragraph, it is unlawful for any person to permit to remain on any property owned or occupied by such person, including abutting rights of way, any tree or tree branch that is in such diseased or dead condition so as to be a danger of falling upon any right of way or the property of another. And then the last one is, it shall be unlawful to dispose of tree trimmings in the right of way, and so on. So that one doesn't really apply. So those are the code sections that have been cited, and you need to make a determination of whether or not there's a violation of those code sections.
Thank you, Councilor Trask. We have a motion, we have a second, and if there's no more discussion, we'll have a roll call.
Mrs. Dabbs?
Abstain.
I'm
Sorry?
Said abstain.
You cannot abstain. You need to vote either for or against.
No.
No? Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Mr. Bergman?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Charrier?
Yes.
Mr. Damasis?
Yes.
Ms. Vaquesi?
Yes.
Mr. Sableski?
No.
Mr. Vesey?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Number 3 under new business is complied. Number 4, case number 16-800000055. Is anyone in the audience for 1986 North Pinellas Avenue? From the city.
Reference case 16-800000055, 1986 North Pinellas Avenue. Originally obtained a complaint regarding the fence, the chain link fence being in poor condition and needs to be repaired or replaced. There's also Brazilian pepper trees on the property along the east side and the north side along the right-of-way. I spoke to the tenant. He cleaned up a significant amount of the property, but unfortunately the property owners wouldn't take responsibility for the fence. They actually wanted him to fix it, and it's a rather significant financial undertaking, so he didn't. City came out, we cleaned up on our side the Brazilian pepper trees on the right-of-way on the east side of their fence, but a number of them are growing inside the fence line, so for obvious reasons, we didn't take those down. I never did speak to the property owner up until a couple of days ago, and I'll get into that in a second. On February 17th of this year, we issued a courtesy letter regarding the inspection results on the 16th of February. On March 4th, a notice of violation was issued to the property owner and also the tenant. On March 29th, a notice of hearing was issued. It was mailed to the property owner of record, determined by the Pinellas County Property Appraiser and Tax Collector's website. We also mailed a copy to the tenant as well, so he was aware. We got a return receipt from the tenant and as well as the owner. I posted the property on April 2nd. I took photographs on April 2nd, and I will tell you, I re-inspected the property again on the 13th. The pictures I'm going to show you shows the majority of the actual chain link being up. They've started to remove the fencing. What was left the day before yesterday were along the south side just poles. There's no fencing, but just the poles were up, and they look like they were in the process of removing them. But as of the 13th, it still was not in compliance. And then along the east side and the north side, there's still Brazilian pepper trees as of the 13th growing on the inside line of their property. So I just wanted you guys to be aware of, when you look at the pictures, they're from the 2nd. Going on, I conducted the reinspection, as I stated, on the 13th. Most of the fence is down, but there are still some Brazilian pepper trees. It was cited under 3603 for fences, walls, and hedges, which must state you maintain your fences, walls, and hedges. And if they're dilapidated, you need to repair them or replace them or remove them. 12-1, state misdemeanors for the non-invasive species, the Brazilian peppers. I have no further.
Any questions of the city?
Yeah.
Me too.
It's not really, I'm just curious. Is it like against the law to have a Brazilian pepper tree?
It's actually state misdemeanor.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
I never knew that. I just thought that.
There's 5 species you can't have. Predominantly in tarpon, we have Brazilian peppers, and I think the other one's called an Australian pine. I've only seen those once, though.
And how do they, like, does a bird drop a seed? Is that how, I mean.
The reason why, one of the things what I've learned from it is they suffocate out the native species significantly. And they have little red berries on them, and the rodents love them. So the raccoons will grab them, eat them, they'll run away, they'll drop the seeds, then these things grow. And they grow like mad. So, and I don't know if you're familiar with what they look like, but if you've ever seen the corner of Mears and Carlton, where West Winds is, the subdivision at Mears and Carlton, that is all Brazilian pepper trees.
Oh, I'm gonna go through there.
Yeah, they're pretty significant, and there's a lot of other problems. They kill off native trees. I think that's the primary reason why they're considered illegal to have them on your property.
Invasive is too polite a word for the Brazilian pepper. It really is. If you have to remove them in our community, we did, of how difficult it is and how expensive it is and how damaging. They put out a poison, they fall and kill and just destroy.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty bad
And
business.
the bad thing to say is about the only thing that'll kill them.
So from the photos, it appears that fence was beyond repair and needed to be removed.
Yeah, and it has been, like, as I stated, all of the chain link along the west side and the south side, and to give you guys an idea where this property is, as you're driving up Alternate 19, right before you cross into the county, you have Anclo Corners on your west side of the road. The place that stores the semis on the right side of the road or the east side of the road, and it's also a repair shop, that's the property in question. So to kind of give you an idea of where it's at, right at the intersection of Anclo Boulevard and Alternate 19 would be the northeast corner, right at the northern end of the city.
We'll take those photos into evidence when you get them. Any other questions for the city? Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I move based on the testimony, evidence, facts presented in law that at the time of the alleged violations, section 36.03 and 12-1, 369.251 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Tarpon Springs were enforced. The respondents have until the 18th of May 2016 to come in compliance with code sections, or a fine of $50 per day shall be imposed for each day thereafter the respondents remains in violation of said code sections.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Dabbs?
Yes.
Mr. Bergman?
Yes.
Mr. Charrier?
Yes.
Mr. Demasis?
Yes.
Ms. Vacasie?
Yes.
Mr. Sobleski?
Yes.
Mr. Vesey?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Anyone in the audience for 444 Athens Street? Thank you for your patience.
That's one way to put it.
Please, if you've been sworn in, if you'd sign in and then state your name and address into the microphone, please.
Nikki Tanner, 444 Athens Street, Tarpon Springs.
And Ms. Tanner, do you represent Curametis Living Trust?
Yes, that's my mother's. It's my mother's property.
Okay,
We're living in her on her property.
okay. Is that sufficient?
Did she give you the authority to come and represent her today?
She's 86 years old. Basically, she's given me the house.
But it's in her name.
It's in the living trust name.
Does she know that you're here today to represent her?
No, she does not. Only because it would probably freak her out. We're dealing with an 86-year-old that's got cancer and just got out of the hospital, basically.
Who's Savasti?
That's my mother.
Okay, so she's the trustee of her own trust, and the trust owns the property.
Yes.
Okay, and you're not a co-trustee.
Not that I know of.
Okay, so you're renting the property from your parents or your mother? Or are you just living there in her?
We're living there. We pay the taxes and we pay the insurance. Or we will be paying the taxes. That's all new.
Okay. Well, Mr. Chairman, there's obviously, if she doesn't know that she's here, then she couldn't have given her permission to represent her interest. I mean, you can still, it's a public hearing. You can still listen to her testimony and so forth, but she will not have the opportunity to cross-examine the city or give a summary because she's not a party.
Understood.
Okay.
So, because you took the time to come, we'll be happy to listen to the few words. We're gonna give you a moment to give your presentation, but it's gonna be fairly limited, okay? Super.
Not a problem.
Okay, go ahead with the city.
Case number 16-800-0073, property address 444 Athens Street. On March 2nd, received a complaint. Part of the complaint was trash and another shed, and just debris and things like that around the property. Trash bags in the backyard visible from Mill Street in the neighbor's backyard. The shed's in poor condition. Trash and debris on the front porch. Trash and debris on the side of the house, which would be the east side of the house, including lumber stacked up. The backyard needed to be mowed and maintained. Needs to clean up trash, repair, remove, or restore the shed. Clean up the front porch on the east side of the house and the east side of the house. I left a courtesy notice on the door hanger. And then on March 14th of this year, we issued a notice violation because it had not come into compliance. On March 29th of this year, notice of hearing was issued and mailed first class to the property owner of record via the Pinellas County Property Appraiser and the tax collector's website. Did not get a return receipt from the property owner, but I have spoke to Nikki. I know at least one time because she is living there. She made contact with us. There was some significant work done on the property, but it still wasn't completely in compliance when I posted the property on April 2nd, and I took a few pictures of it on April 2nd. I did conduct a reinspection on April 13th, and the shed is still there. and the trash and debris is not removed. Since she technically can't ask me questions or testify, I'll give you a little information that she provided me about her mom. The shed contains a bunch of family heirlooms from their father. The mom is going to have a hard time with that shed going away and the items that are inside of that shed. That's part of the process that she told me she's working on trying to work on it. I encouraged her to come today mainly to obtain time to go through that process. So I would say that they're about probably 85 to 90% done. The shed is still there and is an issue. I think you still had an oven in the front yard when I went by.
Following Sunday.
There's a couple things. Now, with that being said, April 17th is the cleanup day for the city.
Oh, good.
Yes, April 17th on Sunday. Make sure you put your stuff out front.
Everything.
So a lot of the items, some of the trash that they do have, will be taken care of on the 17th from what she told me. So, but as of this point in time, she was still in violation of 822 accumulation of trash or debris on the property, and then the duty of maintenance property, as we've already understood that ordinance with the shed being in the condition that it's in. And I do have photographs to provide the board.
We'd
But
love
as I
to see
stated,
those
Nikki
photographs.
primarily was coming to see about time and take care of that. So
They don't need to go down there, so.
it doesn't go down. Okay.
Any questions for the city?
I have a question. Officer, can you give us your best guess, and I understand it to be a guess, but you probably have more knowledge about this than some of the other people sitting here. What would you estimate would be a reasonable amount of time to accomplish what, as the inspector, you would feel would meet your satisfaction of having cleaned up this situation?
First off, I don't like giving my opinion because I do it based on what I could do, but I don't understand the tenant's conditions, and I don't understand having to go through the issue with their mother. I can be sympathetic to it. I can't relate to it. I would probably say 4 to 6 weeks would be a reasonable amount of time to
Thank you.
to take care of that.
Nikki, you think 2 months? You think 2 months?
Well, you can't
My
have-
husband asked if it could be 90 days. Because what we have to do is empty it, show her, and then dispose of it.
Oh, I'm not supposed to ask you that, but I don't know how we can make an intelligent decision if we don't know. Oh, okay. Thanks. There's nothing dangerous.
I'm sorry?
There's nothing really dangerous there as far as somebody walking down the sidewalk or.
No, it's in the backyard. I mean, I don't know what conditions are on the other yard to the east. This is, kind of give you an idea where this is at. As you're going down Athens Street towards the Sponge Docks, is everybody familiar with where Mill Street is, which is a one-way street heading north off of Athens, right before you start getting to the bakeries and everything, where the old Zorbas used to be? This is a couple houses east. They're the houses on the right side of the road, right before you get into where all the bakery's at. She's the second one in. There's a house directly next door, and I'm pretty confident they have 0 property lines, which means your property is the start of the next person's property. So there's the shed and then the neighbor's property right there, and I don't know what's on the other side of that shed. So, but you can see it from the street, and one of those pictures I think was taken from Mill Street, looking through the portico of the neighbor's house.
So does the shed, although well-aged,
Yes.
it does appear perhaps if it got some serious attention, it might be easier than removal altogether. And here's my question. Is it encroaching in an easement, or is it on somebody else's? Does it have to be removed, or that just seemed to be the best path to make it look appropriate?
The first part, easement right-of-ways, no.
Okay.
Have to be removed, as with anything else. If it can be brought up to no longer being in a dilapidated or unsafe condition or a nuisance, then that's a reasonable option.
Okay. Okay. Does anyone have any more questions of the city? Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I move, based on the testimony, evidence, facts presented in law, that at the time of the alleged violation, sections 8-22 and 8-40 of the code ordinance of the city of Tarpon Springs were enforced. The respondent has until the 23rd of June 2016 to come into compliance with the code section, or a $25 fine per day shall be imposed for each day thereafter the respondent remains in violation of said code.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I'd like to amend the amount.
Well,
I think that 25 is very generous, especially when you're given that kind of time. I think 50 would be more appropriate.
I rescind it because I thought I was giving her 90 days, but I only gave her 60.
Okay. I mean, it's the discussion portion, so,
What,
and
you
then,
think 50 days?
I'm looking at what needs to be done, and with all due respect, with her mother's wishes, I think it's something that can be done in 60 days, and, you know, but I'll go along with the 90, you know?
I personally think 90 days is much too long, to tell you the truth, and
I might agree with you,
I
Carl.
have empathy. I've got a 95-year-old mother, and I know that there's problems, okay? But I also look at the allegations about the trash and the situation there. One of the reasons that we have this board is to improve the life of everybody here in Tarpon Springs. And though I have empathy for your situation, you've got neighbors next door that have to put up with this. And I think that you've started to make an effort to get this cleaned up, and I think that's an enviable thing to do, and I appreciate your efforts. But I also think that it doesn't necessarily take 90 days to rectify the situation. If it means even getting stuff out of the shed and temporarily renting a storage area or whatever, I think an effort can be made, and it can be made in a lot less than 90 days. I'm not going to necessarily argue for any particular day, but I would like the co-chairman who raised the point to reconsider possibly the amount of days.
I gave her basically 60 days.
And to continue the discussion, since the waste day is on the 17th, which will address that, I'm gonna fall in line with
Yeah. the
Carl
whole lot
DeMosis
can be
that,
done
okay,
with that pickup.
a lot of that cleanup could be done in a day if
Yeah.
someone so desired. And I would add to the discussion that perhaps by suggesting, because now a shed removal is a serious job, perhaps if the shed was repaired and an obvious effort was made to not look at ramshackle, that effort to not remove it could be made in doing other maintenance to bring the property up. So just in the discussion of things, ultimately our officer will decide whether or not it's in compliance or not.
Well, if you want, Chairman, I will rescind my motion.
How about just an adjustment?
All right, adjustment.
Adjust on. Any other discussion?
You want to just leave it the way it was?
No, because some people said, all right, the 17th.
Because the shed does not have to be removed.
No,
It
it's
just has to
painted.
be removed. That means that the whole discussion about grandma is irrelevant. Then it just comes
Okay.
down to doing the maintenance.
I
that's
would
required.
like to amend my motion to make it the 26th of May, which is giving you, basically 4.5 weeks. And like you said, Mr. Chairman, a lot of it will be gone on Sunday.
And I'll second.
At 25?
Fine. What, you agree? The board agrees with 25?
Yes.
25, $25 a day.
Second.
So we have a motion that moved the time forward and the rate penalty stayed the same. Motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Dabbs?
Yes.
Mr. Bergman?
Yes.
Mr. Charrier?
Yes.
Mr. Demasis?
Yes.
Ms. Vacasie?
Yes.
Mr. Zableski?
Yes.
And Mr. Vesey?
Yes.
Your motion carries.
Good luck.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I ask you questions later?
Yeah, I'll hang around till the end and then we can talk.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
It'll be better after the 17th.
Would someone like to take on our affidavits of noncompliance?
Oh, Bruce isn't
That's
here.
right, he's not, all right.
We'll just pass till next month.
I move to the, accept the affidavits of non-compliance for case number 168000007, 168000013, and that's it for non-compliance.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Chairman, I just want to make note for those last two cases under non-compliance, there's no one here in the audience.
It's noted.
And who gave the second? I'm sorry.
I'll second.
I'm so sorry.
Oh.
Affidavits of compliance.
I move to accept the affidavits of compliance. Case number 13800000886. Case number 15800000405. Case number 15800000503. And case 15800000627.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I move to approve the minutes of the February and March meeting.
Mrs. Debs seconded it.
Thank you, Ms. Dabbs. All in favor of approving the minutes?
I have a question
Yes, please.
on the February minutes, item number 11. It appears that the fine reduction and the original amount are stating the same amount.
Let's see.
He has located a Scribner error.
I
Thank
didn't
you.
notice
We'll
that.
correct that with those corrections.
Has that been noted?
Yes, yes, it has.
Maybe we can get a
I would like to move to accept the minutes as amended.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
I really wanted Marches to say that I was really, really sick. Really sick.
Any public comments?
I have a comment, and I'm sorry, Bobby, that I didn't confer with you prior to, but in reference to the new board members, would it be possible to give Bobby your name, phone numbers, and all that, so we could have a new updated sheet of members on the board?
Oh, I can get that for you. I'm sorry, that's not in here.
Okay. You got,
It's actually, the deputy city clerk holds everyone's name and number, and
okay.
I'll make sure
I
we get a new one in
when,
there.
when you get a chance.
On that same note,
I'm sorry, Bobby.
Look what you started.
I vaguely remember the addition of an additional alternate that's not present today.
We don't have no other.
Thank you.
No other alternates?
See, it says drugs in the 60s. Coming back to
I wasn't born in the 60s. But, okay, so I think that takes us to adjourned. I can't see the clock.
3:25.
3:25. Thank you for everyone coming.
I want to what?
I don't know why I talked to the same board member.
That's right. Damn right. I'm a pro from way back.
Interesting.
Mr. Select. Bobby, do we need to take the microphones and all that today?
My understanding, we can keep them up.
Okay, dear.
Works for us, don't it? Yay!
Officer,
He's got a lot of time on his hands.
Officer, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Trust
I
me.
don't know.
Take them with you. I'm just joking, I don't have to hunt them down.
With, next to St. Michael's and all that, came in.
Everything okay over
and he
your
was with
direction?
Another gentleman, and he was pointing
Good,
fingers, so. Okay, all right, okay.
I'm so observant, it took me a while to realize Miss Bonnie
Well,
didn't
yeah.
come with you as often as,
No, I mean, is he gonna be waiting outside with a gun? Oh, could I have one, please? Could I? Yeah.
Good to see you. It's good to see you.
Oh, that's nice.
Spirited.
Oh, okay.
Really?
Yeah.
He wasn't
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, I didn't, it's terrible for me to take this long to miss somebody.
He's been before us before. This was
Oh, I'm gonna put
actually
it on top of the rest of my
All right,
folders, and
let
that
me
way.
get the